I'm sitting here with Andy Brown, who's one of the people who heads up a lot of our education initiatives here at Udacity. And in fact, not long ago, Andy was kind of the lead on transitioning a lot of what we do at Udacity to a more project-based approach, to have students completing projects as part of their experience and learning different skills. So thank you so much for talking to me today, Andy, about project-based learning.
Yeah, thanks for doing this.
So the first thing I want to ask, and I think this comes up a lot when we're dealing with teachers who want to do a project-based approach but are very stressed for resources, is that project-based learning, at least in my opinion, is much more difficult to implement in a classroom than some traditional rote instruction of just lecturing or giving material straight away. Is it worth the extra effort, and if so, why?
Yes, it's absolutely worth doing project-based learning, and now that there's all sorts of free resources online, there's a lot of free time potentially for instructors to be spending their time coming up with and helping their students as they go through these project activities. There's lots of great explanations, lots of great sort of static resources out there that they're going to solve a lot of the sort of, what am I going to say? How am I going to explain this topic? And in fact, that's, to me, not the interesting part of the teaching. The interesting part of the teaching is how am I going to shepherd this person along as their brain transforms, and that's best done through an authentic project. Mm-hmm. So yes, it's totally worth it. It is hard.
It's getting easier.
but it's getting easier.
Yeah.
This is your job if you've signed up to be a teacher.
Yeah, exactly. I think I've always had the idea that you just referred to of basically building a course around all these awesome free materials that are available online, because there's so much out there that wasn't out there before, and that led to this class, which is an entire class based largely around the materials that are already free online, instead of trying to reinvent the wheel and represent things that have already been presented very well. Let's just see if we can leverage it and spend our time on kind of the more student-focused mentoring and feedback. Speaking of feedback, so one thing that's very difficult, I think, in project-based learning is assessment. That when I have a bunch of students who all did the same math problem, I know what the correct answer is, I know what the steps are, and it's very easy for me to go through and say, you screwed up step 2, you screwed up step 4.
But so what? What do you know when you've done that?
That's true. But yeah, assessment in projects it's more difficult, isn't it? It's a little bit more open-ended.
It is, but it's getting more towards what you actually want to be measuring. So yes, it's very easy to measure some students' ability to factor 10 polynomials correctly. It's just not a very interesting measurement. Every now and then you'll find things that can be assessed that way. It's very important to know these facts before you can move on. But I'm guessing that if you, as an educator, ask yourself, what do I really want? How do I want to change my students with this learning experience I'm crafting? You'll find it's really hard to phrase that in terms of some multiple choice questions or anything like that. And this is especially a danger when you're doing online project-based learning, because multiple choice questions are by far the easiest things to do online. Right, wrong, tally up a score, you have a little green progress bar, and it works. But that experience just is never going to be even close to what you can get if you try to do the project-based learning.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that when we have many of our courses, not our courses, but courses that are currently available online are built around these multiple choice tests. But you have exactly that, where oftentimes they have repeatability built into them, which is great because you learn from your failures. If you get the problems wrong, you move forward and learn. But when you have only a very small set of possible answers, what you're really learning is that C isn't the answer to that question. You're not learning the deeper understanding of what's going on there. But for a teacher who is dealing with, for example, in our class, possibly 100 different projects, all of which need feedback, are there any strategies to how to give feedback in such a way that students can actually improve on it while doing the project, as opposed to just finding out at the end that they already failed?
Yeah, if you can bake feedback into the nature of the project itself. So an example for an HTML, for building an HTML, a web page, let's say. So if you don't know anything about programming, sorry, but if you're building a web page and I say, hey, build a web page that looks like this, and I give you a little image that looks like a web page, the feedback is pretty natural. The feedback is like, well, it doesn't look like that anymore. You don't need the instructor to come and tell you that. The student knows it. And then if you can set up systems of feedback within students, you'd be amazed at the things that can happen when you do the terrifying thing of stepping back as an instructor and just letting your students, screw up and sort of screw up together. That can be a really amazing learning experience. There has to be some constraints placed on that, but you can do it really well. So yeah, if you find yourself staying up till 4 a.m. frantically grading 100 projects, it's probably not ideal, and you're probably killing yourself. You're probably not giving the best feedback to your students that you could, because nobody could do that. And there's probably a more creative solution that will be just as good.
Yeah, it sounds like there are a lot of ways that we can go about that, like giving exemplars that the student can on their own compare their assignment to some exemplar and see where it's different, where it's similar. Maybe building in some automated assessment through some artificial intelligence, not just that question was wrong, but something a little bit deeper about the real nature of the learning, and then let the peers give them feedback on it. I think we often learn best from people who are going through the same struggles that we're going through. So, but you mentioned doing this in the context of web design, and I think you're exactly right that we often talk about project-based learning in the context of computer science, because professionally what we do in computer science is mostly projects. But what about in some other fields that, like accounting or nursing or, I can't think of another field, but other fields where it's not necessarily so project-based on what you actually do. Can project-based learning be used there, or is there something that can be done that kind of perpetuates the same philosophical underpinnings of project-based learning?
I think those fields are still project-based, actually. I think we've overloaded this word project. In computer programming, project can be what you call the thing you're working on the side, this cool web page you're building. In project-based learning, the word project means something very specific. It means an authentic task, an extended task, so more than, it won't be completed in a single day. It's sort of loosely defined, so there's room for creativity. And I mean, the nurse who is monitoring my blood glucose levels, that's a project. The accountant who's doing my taxes. If anyone wants to do project-based learning and do my taxes, that'd be good. But that's a project, right? That's an authentic thing. Like balancing the books on this company, that's an authentic thing. So I think projects are there if you can find them.
Yeah.
And if they're not, a computer's probably doing that job already.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense that we, in computer science, we talk about projects because it's something where I create the idea, I implement it, I execute it, and I deliver it. But no, you're exactly right that a project can be anything, ongoing. It's got some investment in it, but it doesn't necessarily have to be completely open to whatever the student wants to specify. Mm-hmm. So this is an educational technology class, and so we're really looking for the ways we can use technology to enhance education, maybe the learning process or maybe education as a broader community. So specifically on the technology front, are there things that technology lets us do in project-based learning that are difficult to do in person?
Let me start by saying the things that technology tempts us to do that we would never do in person. Mm-hmm. And that's the things like the radio button quizzes, the sort of like, oh, I know how to do a project. I'm going to have 10, checkbox quizzes that I'll ask about how much would you put in this box of my tax return if you're doing the accountant example. That's not authentic. Nobody thinks it's authentic. It's not fun. It's not a good project-based learning. It's a very superficial substitute, and it's really tempting to do because it's so much easier than anything else. The things that the internet gives you. The internet gives you scale and it gives you access. So, it gives you the chance to have people from across the country, across the world, working together on a task at any hour. That's pretty cool. Yeah. But it's a lot of work to set up, and there's a lot of ways it can go wrong. Mm-hmm. So, there's trade-offs for sure. But still, it's a better way of learning if you can find a way to make it work.
Yeah, makes sense. I think that technology gives us a lot of ways to exactly what you're saying, make it a little bit more open, that if it's not necessarily something that has to happen within the confines of the 1 hour lecture that we have set aside for this class 3 days a week. It's something that can happen, at 3 o'clock in the morning when I just happen to be online and a student asks a question, or there's, a project to review and I can watch their progress live, which I really have difficulty doing in person. At Georgia Tech, we actually have some classes that have tried to implement that approach where students will come to a lab and there's no lectures or anything like that, but there's a set aside class time that they're expected to be there. And the idea is sit there, work on your project, and someone will be in the room to give you feedback. But that's a pretty big pragmatic constraint. They have 9 hours a week where they're required to be in the studio working on the project during that time. And now we also have a person who has to be there during that time, whereas the internet allows us to do that a little bit more asynchronously because it kind of makes the classroom unlocked 24/7.
Yeah.
So do you have any final thoughts for our students who are both engaging in project-based learning in this class and may also be trying to develop tools that facilitate project-based learning?
Yeah, well, if you're going through this class, which is itself an example of project-based learning, reflect on what's going well and what's not. There's learning to be done just in that. When you go on to try to do project-based learning in your own classroom, it's hard. You're not going to get it right to begin with. The bad version will still probably be better than if you hadn't tried, but there's going to be a lot of things that it's going to feel chaotic and sort of out of control, really, out of your control. And that's sort of the nature of project-based learning, is the students gain more autonomy, which is a lot of the reason why we do it. So stay reflective. Next year will be better, and next year will be better than that. And this is how we improve at our craft.
And this is how I justify what I said at the beginning of this course, which is that there are some things we'll do in this course that will fail miserably. See, now I have an expert saying that that's okay. So thank you so much for talking to us today, Andy.
Thank
and
you.
thank you for your perspective. And thank y'all.